Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Mythic Nathria. My name is Shirley, and today we're going to be looking at the Council of Blood fight on the Arms Warrior. I'm playing the standard single-target build right now. Hasn't changed any. Skull Splitter, Ravager, Avatar, those sorts of things. We're going to jump right into this one. We're going to start off on Frida on Mythic, same as Heroic. And there's a lot to unpack right on the pole here. One, I'm going to be standing behind her as long as I possibly can because this fight, the bosses will parry you constantly, which is, a big no-no for any melee, but really hurts Arms Warriors since you generate rage through auto attacks. But as soon as the first recital here goes out, I'm going to move to the square marker where the majority of our raid is stacked up, and that's to deal with the dance mechanic where we have to avoid the pools, and we're going to rotate, as you saw, around the boss there. And I want to be as close to the boss as I possibly can during that to maintain uptime, because we are trying to push her before the first attendant spawns. So we beat that check, and then it's time for the intermission dance here. I did see the attendant spawn on the right-hand side of the room, kind of over by the X marker you can see there. So as soon as we're done with our intermission phase here, I'm going to go ahead and immediately head over to that direction because the attendants are basically the biggest priority mechanic in this entire fight on Mythic. The boss damage later on isn't, it's going to add up a lot more as long as these attendants die immediately. So as soon as this comes out, I'm going to go ahead and swap over to it. One other thing is when you hit 6 stacks of the dancing buff during intermission, you can go ahead and immediately move if you were not aware, so you don't need to wait around for the RP to announce that, they're coming back down or anything. You can instantly just start moving. And now I got the Dark Recital once again here. I'm going to be just stutter-stepping my way around the boss. You don't have to sprint. You really want to, try to stay grouped up and do it as slow as possible. And then I'm going to pop all my cooldowns on one of the other 2 bosses, doesn't matter which one, with Sweeping Strikes up to cleave as many condemns onto Frida as I can during that 50 to 35% window. And as soon as Sweeping Strikes is up, or I should say when Frida hits 35% health, you need to switch back to her as fast as possible, even if you still had Sweeping Strikes up, because you're doing more priority damage to Frida herself. So we're going to go ahead and, get on her and put in as many condemns as we can, because all the other boss damage is just wasted, of course. I just realized I got this mechanic a ton, this particular kill. We're going to go ahead and, as soon as Frida goes down, get on Stavros next and move to the middle of the room here. We had the end of the recital, and I also got the jumping debuff mechanic. We're going to go ahead and not jump all at the once there as we're transitioning. We need to stack up in the middle of the room. That way we can plan for it accordingly with healing cooldowns and whatnot. And Stavros, unfortunately, he does the little dodge thing, so you definitely don't want to be, standing behind him or in front of him, or you're going to get clipped by it. So it can make keeping, good uptime on him a little bit tricky. The waiters that spawn during his phase, basically you want to be popping Sweeping Strikes in one of 2 situations as a warrior. One, to either cleave off of the other boss, Niklaus, with cooldowns up like I'm doing right here, just to get as many condemns onto Stavros as possible. But outside of those cooldown windows, or when Niklaus is below 80%, we're just going to use Sweeping Strikes on cooldown basically to cleave down as many of these waiters as we possibly can, because they don't seem like a big deal right now, but that throw food cast they do adds up quite a bit later on in the fight, and it starts to really hurt. So any DKs that can grip these things in later on is going to be a big help. And we're just going to passively, cleave them down as much as we can and hit our next intermission phase. I'm all the way in the back here. There's not too much to really commentate, I suppose, for this section of the fight, other than it's very important to steal your Warlock's appearance if you can do this, because it's going to maximize your DPS. Just passing the time in the middle of this, because these intermissions get kind of boring after you've done them for, so many hours. And we hit 6 stacks, so I'm going to go ahead and just instantly get going right here. Saving my leap because I wanted to wait to see where this attendant was going to spawn at and get on it as soon as possible. Anytime that you know, these things are out. High priority. Not jumping here. I got the debuff. We're going to wait to stack back up in the middle of the room like we did before, and use some healing cooldowns here, or, you know, any sort of mitigation. And we generally don't want to just burn them all off immediately like you would on the very first one during the fight. You want to kind of stagger them out, of course. You're not accidentally killing people. I opted to go ahead and save cooldowns for Stavros here to get him below 35% before I went ahead and popped Avatar and Warbreaker and all that stuff, just to put that condemn damage on him. But I also sweeping strikes, and then I'm trying to position myself off to the left here a little bit so I can cleave these waiters down with those cooldowns and sweeping strikes up, rather than burn it like I did before, trying to, you know, pad off of, not pad, but cleave off of Niklaus, because he was already below 80%, so you couldn't do that anyway. So it's better in that situation to just hold on to your cooldowns for the execute window. Then we're going to get the debuff again here to run around the boss. When he does his dodge thing, I would say just move around his original positioning, that rather than try and, you know, chase him. The dancers come down, and every time this happens, we opted to move to the other side of the room, or back to the front of the room here at Moon, and burn some of our healing cooldowns during these next set of jump debuffs. And at this point, we're going to be holding DPS a little bit, so I'm not burning Ravager and everything, because we're waiting for this attendant to spawn here before we actually kill Stavros. And that's going to set us up really nicely for the last boss, being Niklaus and his burn phase. So as soon as Stavros goes down, we're going to move back to our original position in the room, which is the skull and square marker. And we're going to go ahead and Bloodlust and use our second potion here, and pop any cooldowns that we have, and burn him as quickly as possible, because we're trying to do a couple of things in between the 100 to 50% window. These gargoyles, the first one right here that just spawned, our Demon Hunter tank is going to pick it up, and he's going to try to kite this thing around the room as long as he can. And we still have to kill these attendants immediately, so anytime they're coming out, you want somebody to be calling out the position in the room, so you can instantly swap to these things, everybody. And then back on Niklaus, trying to get him to 50% right about the same time that the second gargoyle spawns is what our strategy opted up being. Instead of killing the first one, we figured we would try to kill both the gargoyles during the intermission phase, and just do a full burn on Niklaus himself and any attendants that might spawn. And the Frida image still spawns during this phase, so you want people obviously assigned to interrupt her. If there's melee standing next to it, or if you're lucky enough, then, you know, obviously throw in any kicks. I lucked out here that the Stone Guard ended up spawning right next to my dance recital position, so I can actually get some melee damage in here during the transition, which was really nice. This was the first one, I believe, that we were still dealing with. All of our ranged is just attacking both these gargoyles. The other one's behind me there. You can kind of see it off the left by the blue marker. Any chance I get to inch up next to the edge of my square here and attack this gargoyle, I'm going to be taking it, because we hit 6 stacks, this thing's not dead, it's got to go down, you know, as fast as possible here, because we're just going to get even more gargoyles and attendants and everything. And during the final 50% phase of this fight, these attendants spawn really fast, so you really want people to be pre-planning, pre-pooling resources, anything at all, to get them killed as fast as possible, because you lose a ton of uptime on the boss if you're slow on killing these attendants. And when you're progressing this, that's, you know, probably the biggest thing I would say, is just make sure these attendants go down as fast as possible. Even saving cooldowns for some of them during the end would be good. But we hit the final 35% phase window here, so I'm going to go ahead and burn my Avatar and Warbreaker and Ravager and all that, and, you know, start spamming out the last cooldowns into the boss for execute phase. We got another gargoyle there. Our tank is still kiting them around. We're just ignoring them. We do have to kill the attendant. I'm going to get in as much damage here during our recital as I can, but that's, you know, other people's priority at that moment while we're running around, so you don't try and or accidentally clip somebody with the pools and get them killed. But we still have to be interrupting the Frida ad, and our tank is doing a hell of a job kiting this big guy around. And things get really stacked towards the end here. We get another attendant when Niklaus himself is really low, so that's got to die instantly, and just everybody try and keep their cool, basically, during the last 10% of the boss. This final gargoyle that spawns right when we have to move for the swirl debuff. And anytime that happens, I would say that you just find your partner and run away like it's heroic and just try to get out, because that knockback's inevitable at the same time. Instead of trying to all stack up and move again, it's just easier to run to the edges of the room, basically. Unfortunately, we got that final ad there to put the shield up on the boss, so that had to die before we could actually finish the boss off. But there it is, the Council of Blood, clean as usual. If you guys have any questions about the fight, feel free to leave them down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.